Can you take it? And, thank you. Well, I don't think I can say more than what's already been said in that last presentation. That was incredible. And thank you for having me. I'd like to thank our Northern California chapter for all the work they did here. You know, the strength of our organization, our movement, actually lies in our chapters of volunteers all over the world. And without them, we wouldn't have our ships at sea. So we're very, very proud of our chapters and the volunteers. Right now, we have 12 ships at sea. It's Neptune's Navy. We call it Neptune's Navy. And I'll just briefly go through where all of them are right now. Our vessel, the Farley Mowat, and our vessel, the Sharpie, are now in the Sea of Cortez, just winding down on Operation Milagro. Operation Milagro is to protect the endangered vaquita, prevent it from going extinct, also to protect the endangered totoaba fish. And we're working in partnership with the Mexican government to achieve that. We're finally at a stage where we're able to intercept and confiscate the poachers' nets as fast as they go into the water. And of course, this isn't without its dangers. We've had 3 of our drones shot down, which we used to find them, and we've had shots fired at our crew. But we are carrying Mexican Navy personnel with us right now to protect us. And that campaign is enormously successful, and we'll be returning again in November when that season starts. So what we have in that fleet is we have 4 former U.S. Coast Guard island-class patrol boats, and the Sharpie and the Farley Mowat are 2 of them. The John Paul de Joria is right now in the Turks and Caicos, where we're working out a deal with the Turks and Caicos to patrol in the Caribbean. And we're also working with Dominica and Tobago, and we'll be going after poachers in the Caribbean. And recently, the John Paul de Joria just came from Peru, where we were able to intervene and make cause for the arrest of one of the largest factory fishing vessels in the world, a Chinese vessel, an enormous vessel. And it was trying to slip out of Peru, but the John Paul de Joria intercepted it and got the Peruvian government to arrest it. So it's now under arrest. Our vessel, the Martin Sheen, which is a sailing vessel, has just arrived in British Columbia in Canada, and that's to stop for the 3rd year of Operation Virus Hunter, and that is to oppose the salmon farms in British Columbia, which are spreading viruses and parasites to wild salmon populations. We're working with Dr. Alexandra Morton to expose the what the problems with salmon farming. Last year we were able to get cameras into those nets to show that the fish in those nets are full of ulcers and open sores and everything, and this is what they're selling. But the Atlantic salmon are an invasive species. If you or I were to put a piranha into a lake in California, that would be a crime. But here this industry is putting an invasive predator into an ecosystem where it doesn't belong, and because there's $1 billion being made from that industry, they're able to get away with it. But slowly but surely, we're bringing that industry down. We're working in partnership there with indigenous people, with the First Nations, and again, that's making a lot of progress. In Africa, our vessel, the Bob Barker, is presently off the west coast of Africa doing anti-poaching work, both in partnership with Liberia and Gabon, and we're going to be extending that partnership to other West African countries. And every time we go out, we're making arrests, we're stopping poachers, we're pulling them in, their vessels are being seized. And on the East Coast, we're in partnership with Tanzania, with the Ocean Warrior, doing the same thing, and we're going to extend that partnership to Mozambique and to Kenya. And so what we're building is a worldwide anti-poaching fleet to go after these illegal fishing operations. Our vessel, Steve Irwin, is in Australia. It just returned from a very successful campaign in the Australian Bight. Last year, we were able to prevent Chevron and Shell from drilling in the Great Australian Bight, and now we're fighting the Norwegian oil company Statoil, but we're getting a lot of public support on that particular campaign. So all over the world, what we're doing is policing in a realm where there is law but no enforcement. There's a lack of political and economic motivation to uphold international conservation law, and we're filling that vacuum. And we're growing all the time. And we're no longer an organization. Sea Shepherd is a movement. And we're in 45 different countries. Those countries are all separate entities, and they all work together to support the operation of our Navy, those vessels that are out on the sea right now. And we're hoping it'll grow bigger and stronger. And the great thing about having a volunteer Navy is that, I get criticized all the time by people saying, oh, your people aren't professional, they don't know what they're doing, you need professionals. I said, no, I don't need professionals. I need, professionals aren't going to get anything done. They only work for money. I couldn't pay people to do what these volunteers do for nothing. That kind of passion, that kind of courage cannot be bought. And so our crews come from all over the world right now. I think about 25 different nations are represented on the ships. Right now there's about 210 people on those ships, and they're changing all the time. And when our crew come, the one thing that they go away with is a sense of empowerment, that they have the ability to change the world and make a difference. And we're trying to instill that into more and more people all the time. And I think that that has had repercussions right down the line. Back in 1979, for example, I had a crew member who came to me and he said, this is right in the early days, and we just hunted down the pirate whaler Sierra, rammed it, and put it out of business in Portugal. And this crew member came to me, he says, what are we going to do about laboratory animals in the U.S.? I said, well, Sea Shepherd's not going to do too much about it because, you can't cruise into a lab with a ship, but why don't you do something about it? And he said, well, what can I do? Because he's only 19. Well, use your imagination. Courage, imagination, and passion. And so what did he do? He went back, got a job in a lab in Maryland. He videotaped everything for a year, and then brought that videotape to the Washington Post and to the TV stations, and ended up shutting down that lab. And that was Alex Pacheco who co-founded PETA, so that was where that came from. So what we try to make our crew understand is, yes, go forth and follow your passion. If it is this species or this habitat, go and follow your passion, because that's what does make a difference. Because of Diane Fossey, we still have mountain gorillas in Rwanda. Because of Barunthe Gelticos, we are protecting orangutans. Because of a man named David Wingate, who most people haven't heard of, but because of him, the Bermuda storm petrel is not extinct. And I can't think of anything more noble than the fact that because you lived, a species has been prevented from going extinct because you intervened. And so this really illustrates each and every one of us has the power to make that difference. That all we have to do is find our passion and explore the possibilities. I began doing what I was doing when I was 11 years old. And that's because I lived in Eastern Canada, and I spent the summer before, when I was 10, swimming with a family of beavers in a beaver pond. And it was a great summer, had a wonderful time. And the next summer when I went back, I couldn't find the beavers anywhere, and I began to ask questions and found out trappers had come during the winter and taken them all out. And I became really, really angry. And that winter I walked the trap lines, freed the animals from the traps, and destroyed those traps. And I admit, I got into a lot of trouble as a kid. You just don't go do that without getting into trouble, but I didn't mind. Dixie Lee Ray, the former governor of Washington, once said that the proof of Watson's insanity is that he shot a boy in the ass when he was 12 who was about to kill a bird. Any boy who would shoot another boy to protect a bird has to be insane. And my response to that is that in my community, every boy shot every other boy with a BB gun. I just happen to have a practical reason to shoot the kid that I did. Didn't really hurt him. But, and then later when I was 18, I became the youngest founding member of Greenpeace. That was in 1969. So it's been a long road since then, and learned so many things during those years, which has helped to put together what we call our Neptune's Navy. And I'm very proud of the fact that right now is that it is a movement. I don't even know what's going on half the time on these 45 different countries. You know, I get a message that, Sea Shepherd Nicaragua just saved 2 sea turtles. And I'm going, we have a Sea Shepherd Nicaragua? I didn't know that. So, you know, it's a movement that flows and flows organically. When it comes to the ocean, for the most part, it's out of sight and it's out of mind. That the single most important group of species on this planet are phytoplankton, the plants that grow in the ocean. They provide the food foundation for all life in the sea and then ultimately us. But they also provide up to 80% of the oxygen that we breathe. If phytoplankton goes extinct, we go extinct, which means that the ocean dies, we die. Now, since 1950, there's been a 40% diminishment in phytoplankton populations in the world. And for the most part, people are completely unaware of it. Don't think about it, it's not on the news, you know, it's just a bunch of seaweed, really. Well, the problem is that the reason for this actually is because of our diminishment of whales and seabirds and marine life. Because what they do is they contribute to the phytoplankton. The whales, for example, are the farmers of the ocean. Every day, one blue whale defecates 3 tons into the ocean. Very rich in nitrogen, very rich in iron, those essential nitrogens that phytoplankton need to survive. You reduce those populations of whales and dolphins and seabirds, you reduce the nutrient supply to the phytoplankton, causing their diminishment. Everything in the ocean is interconnected. The 3 laws of ecology are the law of diversity, the law of interdependence, and the law of finite resources. And we humans are violating each of those laws each and every single day. And the best way to really describe it is if you imagine the Earth as a spaceship, which is what it is. We're a spaceship traveling around the galaxy on this incredible voyage at incredible speeds that we're not even aware of. But every spaceship has a life support system. That life support system regulates our climate and temperature. It also provides food, and it provides the air we breathe, the oxygen that we breathe. And that life support system is run by a crew of Earthlings, and that crew are not us. We're passengers on Spaceship Earth. We're having a wonderful time amusing ourselves with all the stupid little things that we do. And but the crew are running the ship, and what are we doing? We're killing off the crew. And there's only so many crew members you can kill before the machinery begins to fall apart. A few years ago, I was taken to task by the Fox Network, which I was quite flattered by, and they said that I had said that trees and bees and worms were more important than people. And they asked me, how could you say something so outrageous? I said, well, because trees and bees and worms are more important than people. The reason being is they can live here without us, but we cannot live here without them. We need them, they don't need us. This sense of entitlement that human beings have, which is what I call Anthropocentrism, is that everything revolves around us. When in fact, if we're going to survive, we have to be able to understand biocentrism, that we're part of the whole. We're not dominant, we're part of everything. And that we're interconnected with all other life. And then, you know, when they say, well, we're more important than anything else. No, we aren't. Worms are more important than we are. We just have to understand that if we're going to survive, we need to understand humility. We need to learn to live in harmony with these other species. I was debating a whaler one time. He says, but Watson, you say that whales are more intelligent than people. That is a very stupid thing to say. I said, why is that? He said, well, it's just a stupid thing to say. And I said, well, you know, I measure intelligence by the ability to live in harmony with our world, our natural world. And by that criteria, whales are far more intelligent than we are. And he looked at me and said, well, by that criteria, cockroaches are more intelligent than we are. I said, George, you're beginning to understand what I'm trying to tell you. You know, intelligence is relevant to our ability to live in harmony on this planet. And when it comes to whales and dolphins, it's really interesting because, you know, if anybody's taken Biology 101, you know, they have a picture of a rat's brain, and then they have a picture of a dog's brain and a monkey brain, and then they have a picture of a human brain, and the teacher will say, well, you can see by the increasing size of the brain and the complexity of the brain and the neocortex area that, you know, dogs are smarter than rats, Monkeys are smarter than dogs, and humans are smarter than monkeys. You know what they know? They never put an orca or sperm brain, a whale brain up there because it makes us look really stupid. And we don't like to look stupid, so we simply ignore the fact that they have bigger brains and more complex brains, 4-lobe brains. And in fact, the human brain is about 1,700 cubic centimeters, the orca is 6,000 cubic centimeters, and the largest brain to ever evolve on this planet is the sperm whale with a 9,000 cubic centimeter brain. And yet that big brains mean something. You know, dinosaurs were big with brains the size of walnuts. Big brains mean something. But of course we dismiss that if it makes us look inferior. But you know, all animals are intelligent. A dog can come in here and tell you who was here yesterday. You know, we don't have that ability. So it's relevant to what their role is within an ecosystem. And you know, people, you know, you always get this if you're in the vegan community. Well, you know, well, plants have feeling too. And you know, what about plants? Well, here's the difference between plants and animals. Plants evolved themselves to be eaten. That's why they give us fruits and nuts and everything, and they make it really delicious because they want us to eat them, because that's how they have sex, is because they propagate themselves through us eating their seeds. And of course, that's pretty hard to get through to a lot of people because they don't really understand that thing. It's you know, that's a real birds and the bees conversation that they don't exactly want to get into. But the fact is that plants are very much manipulating us. You know, that's how intelligent they are relative to their ecology. They're manipulating us. So therefore, they develop these fruits and these nuts and everything to entice us to eat them. So that's a good argument, I think, to use against those morons who say, how come you eat plants? You know, anyway. Many years ago, with Sea Shepherd, we decided, you know, Sea Shepherd's our vessels have been vegetarian since 1979, way back then. But in 1999, we decided that, okay, it's got to be vegan all the way. I mean, 40% of the fish taken out of the ocean is being fed to cows and pigs and chickens, and it's very much a part of what we're doing to the ocean is eating the ocean alive. And so our vessels have all been vegan ever since. We're the only vessels that have gone on long expeditions to Antarctica that have been vegan vessels, and we actually survived without any problems. And so that's why we promote it, because this, I think, and we're a marine conservation group, and we're the only marine conservation group that seems to understand that there's a direct link to what we eat and what we're doing to the oceans. Because if you go to any of the others, you know, you can get your little field guide to sustainable fish that you can buy as to what is good and what is bad. I keep wanting to put out a Sea Shepherd guide to sustainable fish that would have 20 blank pages. There are no sustainable fisheries anywhere in the world. The oceans are dying. For hundreds of years, shaman in places like Polynesia, French Polynesia and Hawaii, they had this system called kapu, which meant the shaman would say, this bay is kapu for the next 20 years, no fishing. Anybody caught fishing in that bay during that 20-year period of time was given the death penalty. And people say, well, that's a little extreme. No, it wasn't extreme at all, because they understood something, and that is that the fish disappeared, they would disappear, that they would die. The fish died, they would die. They understood that. Today there is no kapu area anywhere in the world. Every single commercial fishery is in a state of decline. And according to Dr. Boris Worm, Dr. Daniel Pauly, by 2048 there won't be any fishing industry because there won't be any fish. But the problem is that we have this thing called the economics and the politics of extinction. There's money to be made by driving these species extinct. Example, bluefin tuna. We've taken 92% of the bluefin tuna from the oceans. 92%, but they're still catching them. It's the most expensive fish on the planet. Sells in Japan on average $75,000 for one fish. You put that kind of price tag on the fish's head, there's going to be a demand for it. Now here's the thing. If the Japanese decided to not catch another bluefin tuna for the next 10 years, they have 15 years supply of this fish in their warehouses. But they won't do that because they realize that if they stop fishing, the population will rise again. And if the population rises again, the bluefin in their tuna in their warehouses, the price will go down. They have to keep the price up, so they have to keep the species diminished. Scarcity translates into profit. And so they don't really care if they wipe it out, because say the bluefin goes extinct, who owns these fisheries? Mitsubishi, big corporations. They'll just take that short-term investment for short-term gain and reinvest it in something else, airplanes, cars, whatever. They don't care. They're not interested in the future. They're interested in how much money they can make right now, no matter what the consequences are. There's more illegal fishing going on in our oceans than there is legal fishing. And legal fishing's bad enough. But to give you, everywhere we go, we're coming across poachers using heavy gear machinery, long lines, drag trawls, drift nets, gill nets. We've pulled nets out of the water that are 100 kilometers long. The net we pulled out of the Southern Ocean from the tooth fishery was 72 kilometers long, weighs 70 tons. And we worked for 200 hours to get that net out of the water, and it was full of thousands of dead animals. You know, these are mass weapons of ecological destruction that they're putting in there, and we've got to stop it. At the climate change conference in Paris a couple of years ago, I said, if you want a solution to climate change, leave the oceans alone. Let the oceans have time to repair the damage that we've done to it. But our political economic system is geared up to ignore that kind of advice. Because people are going to lose money, and that's the bottom line for it. As long as there's something money to be made, they will continue to kill whatever's in the ocean, like they continue to kill elephants and rhinos and everything else. It's because of that dark side of humanity, which is only concerned with profits. So how do we get around that? And I think the only way to get around it is through direct action. What we established with Sea Shepherd is what I call aggressive nonviolence. First of all, governments have a monopoly on violence, so you're not going to win them in any violent conflict. So you have to come up with a way that you're aggressive, but at the same time, and also effective. But you don't want to hurt anybody. And one of the things I'm most proud about in Sea Shepherd is that in 41 years, we've never caused a single injury to a single person and never sustained any serious injuries to our crew. And that's a record we intend to keep. Back in 1985, I had a Tibetan Buddhist monk come to my ship in Seattle. They gave me this really colorful statuette of it was a dragon with horse's head and wings on it and everything. And he said, put this up, I've been asked to give this to you and put it up on your mast and, for protection. Now, I'm not really a religious person, but if a Tibetan Buddhist monk comes along and gives you something and asks you to put it up there, why not? It's not going to hurt. So I put it up there, never thought anything about it, until 1989, when I had the very wonderful opportunity to have lunch with the Dalai Lama. And as I was talking to him, I pulled out this picture. I said, what is this? Found out that he had sent it to us. I said, well, that's wonderful, but what is it? And he says, it's called Hayagriva. And I said, oh, well, what's that mean? And he said, it's the symbolic aspect of Buddha's anger. Okay, what does that mean? And he said, well, you never want to hurt anybody, but sometimes when they cannot see enlightenment, scare the hell out of them until they do. So he understood our approach, which was we use intimidation. I had the opportunity to give a lecture a few years ago to the FBI. They actually paid me to come and speak to them. And they said, well, Sea Shepherd's walking a pretty fine line when it comes to the law. I said, yeah, well, who cares how fine it is, as long as you don't cross the line. Well, they couldn't really argue with that, but well, one guy said, well, some of your crew go on to become eco-terrorists. I said, like who? They said, well, Rob Coronado, he's an eco-terrorist. Well, he freed some mink and he's an eco-terrorist. I said, but besides, I can't be responsible for what people do after they leave the ship. Rod did what Rod did because Rod thought that was the best thing to do, but that's his responsibility, not ours. The guy looked at me and says, you trained them, you're responsible. And I said, well, I got 4 names for you, Timothy McVeigh, Lee Harvey Oswald, and Osama bin Laden, and some other guy. I said, you trained them, you're responsible. And the guy looked at me and says, well, they were in the Marines, I'm in the Army. Totally nonsensical answer. But anyway, this is the thing. Sea Shepherd has never really committed a crime, but there's a perception that we commit crimes. There's actually a perception out there that we kill people, which really works into our favor. Because when we show up, they drop what they're doing and they run, just like the thunder ran from us down in the Southern Ocean. And what was it, 2 years ago, we encountered a Chinese Driftnet fleet in the Indian Ocean using Driftnets, which have been illegal since 1997. And Sid Chakravarti was the captain on the Steve Irwin at the time, and he filmed everything and chased them. And he chased them all the way back to China. A long voyage from the Indian Ocean to China. Never let them up. Chased them. And when they got to the coast of China, there was 2 Navy ships there. And the fishermen said, "We're being pursued by pirates." And the Chinese Navy said, "What the hell is this all about?" And Sid said, "We caught these guys breaking laws, using drift nets. We got the evidence, and we've already contacted Beijing." And the Navy said, "Okay, well, bring them in." We brought a Chinese fleet into China. They were arrested. The captains lost their licenses, and the companies were fined. So people were telling us before that you can't go to China. They're not going to do that. You just do it, and you'd be surprised at what you can get away with. And of course, 3 years ago, we had probably one of our most dramatic campaigns when we cleaned out the Southern Ocean toothfish poachers in the Southern Ocean. Toothfish is marketed as Chilean sea bass. It's not a bass, and it's not from Chile, but you know, it's a marketing term because people don't like, well, I'm going to buy something called toothfish, but I'll buy Chilean sea bass. So anyway, we went after them. The Interpol had them on their Interpol purple list, meaning they're illegal for 10 years, but nobody did anything about them. So we decided to go after them. The Australian government warned us that if they went after them, they would charge us with illegal fishing if we tried to pull their nets up. So we just ignored them too. And 8 days later, we found the most notorious one of all, the Thunder. And the pursuit happened. They dropped their nets and they ran. And the Bob Barker chased the Thunder for 110 days from the coast of Antarctica, all across the Indian Ocean, the Atlantic, all over the places. They tried to lose the Bob Barker. They weren't able to do it, all the way up to the coast of West Africa at the equator near a place called Santome. And they ran out of fuel. We were able to outrun them. And what did the captain of the Thunder do? He sank his ship right in front of us. And we filmed it, and that's where the documentary Chasing the Thunder comes from. He sank the ship to destroy the evidence. But as the ship was sinking, our crew boarded the Thunder, got the evidence, got the computers, the logbooks, and samples of the fish that they were taking. That captain went to prison for 3 years, his 2 officers went to prison for 2 years, and the company was fined 17 million euros. So it was a very successful campaign. Now, but they dropped their nets. So the Salmon followed through. They were 1,000 miles behind, coming from New Zealand. They found the nets where the Steve Irwin said, where the Bob Barker said they were. They found the nets, and Sid Chakravarti and his crew pulled that net up. It took them 200 hours to pull those 70 tons of net up. We then transported those nets to Germany, and Adidas is now making running shoes out of them, so they'll no longer be put in the water again. Nets, by the way, from Mexico that we've been confiscating. We've confiscated 100,000 meters of nets so far, and they're being recycled. Stella McCartney made a handbag as a fundraiser for Sea Shepherd out of them. We also confiscated 10 tons of lead from those nets, and we've just produced 2,000 dive weights out of those nets, out of the lead. So we're recycling the materials so they can never be used again. But one of the things that I'm finding now is that, for many, many years, of course, people would, we were condemned as pirates and eco-terrorists and everything, and every time anybody asks me accuses me of being an eco-terrorist, I said, no, I've never worked for Monsanto, so I'm not. But now, strangely enough, after all of those years of being condemned for that, we're now being invited by governments to help work with them to stop poaching, because they know that poaching is a very, very serious threat to our survival on this planet, that we're over-exploiting the resources in the ocean to an incredible, irresponsible degree. And the other thing is that people don't really give a lot of thought to fish. What goes on in the ocean tends to be pretty much out of sight. We treat every fish as a fish, just a fish. It takes 4 years for a salmon to become sexually mature, and then it dies. It takes an orange roughy 45 years to become sexually mature and can be lived to be 200 years old. You cannot treat a fish that lives to be 200 years old in the same way as you treat a fish that lives only 4 years. And that's why orange roughies simply disappeared off the, you don't see it. It used to be in Trader Joe's and everywhere, Whole Foods even. You don't see that anymore because the fishery collapsed. Just as cod fisheries have collapsed, just as pretty much everything is collapsing right now when it comes to fish. And the bottom's going to drop out, and it's going to be a very, very rude awakening for humanity as a whole when this happens, because they think, oh, I just ran out of fish. No, we run out of, a fish has more use swimming in the sea than it does on anybody's plate, because the fishes are maintaining the ecological integrity of our ocean. And the fish die, the ocean dies, we die. That's the direct link that is there. And it's a very difficult thing because people have been conditioned to ignore what's going on in the ocean. There is no difference between a bluefin tuna and a cheetah. A bluefin tuna is the fastest fish in the ocean. It's a warm-blooded fish. It's an incredible fish. And yet we don't look on it as anything other but just a fish. It's an amazing animal. And yet, we give very little thought about it. We think that, a lot of people go out and they fish and say, well, at least I catch and release. Yeah, well, usually the stress causes those fish to die. And also, what's the point? Why does anybody go fishing so they can catch and release? What kind of joy do they take out of that? It's never made any sense to me at all. But then again, why do people kill elephants and lions? Mainly because they have some serious sexual and emotional problems, I think, but they should be dealt with. But this is the state of our world right now. And then the only thing that's going to change it, because you're not going to change anything through politics, I can tell you right now, you just look around at any world where the politicians are in charge of what's going on and nothing ever changes. Even the politicians who say they're going to do things don't. I'm both American and Canadian, but coming from Canada, everybody thinks, oh, you have such a wonderful prime minister up there. Yeah, he talks pretty good, but he's just as bad as everybody else when it comes to protect. He's for the seal hunt. He's not doing anything to protect the salmon. He's all for pipelines and tar sands and everything, and he supports the oil companies. And Justin Trudeau, I call him Just in Crudo, or Crudo, for crude oil. But he's no different. No matter what they say, once they get in, I think they take them into a back room somewhere and explain reality to them, because they never ever fulfill their promises. And we can't expect anything from them. But what we can expect is that we have the ability, or what we can understand is we have the ability to understand. We have the ability to make that difference, because literally millions of people doing millions of little things is what can really change the world. And that's the kind of thing that we're trying to encourage, that you and I and everybody can make that difference. Because we're also brought up in a society that tries to make you understand that you have no power. You can't do anything. If you want to change things, you got your opportunity at the ballot box. And that's about it. No, you have your opportunity every single day. When you find something that you're passionate about, go on the warpath to protect what you're passionate about. And it's amazing how you can make a difference. And that's just happening more and more and more all the time. I have to say that this generation now is far, far more involved actively than it was 30, 40 years ago. People say, well, you guys were really, very passionate back in the 70s. Yes, but there was very few of us. Now there's a lot of people who are passionate about this. And especially amongst young people, as we just saw, that young people are understanding that they can speak out. When people ask me, what do we teach our children? You know what? Don't teach them anything. They don't need you to teach them. They have instincts. They have intuition. All you have to do is encourage those instincts and the intuition. Children know what is right or wrong if you encourage them to do so, and you support them when they come up with ideas. I remember when I was a child, I came up with ideas and they were immediately put down. I would say, I think that dinosaurs had feathers. I think they're kind of like birds. That's stupid. That's a stupid thing to think. But I was right. I cut up a map of the world. Got in trouble for that, but I cut up the map of the world and I put all the continents together and I says, I think this is one big continent once. Remember, this is back in the 50s. And they said, that's a stupid thing to say. Turned out I was right. How did I know that? Because intuitively it felt right. And children have that ability to see with their intuition. And I think that that's why we should encourage them, and we should listen to them, because a lot of answers can come from that area. And so I'm very, I'm always willing to entertain anything that any child says when they come forward and say, well, what about trying this? Of course, some of the ideas like, why don't you use torpedoes? Well, we don't do that. But you know, but we try to entertain their ideas as best as we can. So again, Sea Shepherd is just one group. The power of any ecosystem, the strength of any ecosystem, lies in diversity within that ecosystem. Therefore, the strength of any movement has to lie in diversity of approaches, whether that be litigation, legislation, direct action, education, everything like this. That is the strength of a movement, is in diversity. So when people say, well, I disagree with what you're doing, well then okay, do what you're doing. We're all working towards the same cause. It doesn't really matter if you disagree with what we do. Frankly, we don't care. But you know, you do what you do. We will support what you're doing because it's all going towards the right thing. And you know, we're very proud of the fact that our ships are vegan vessels. What we've learned over the years is the best way to teach that is through example. We have great vegan chefs. People come on board. You don't have to be vegan to come on board the crew, but you have to be vegan while you're on the crew. And during that time, people are exposed to something that they've never been exposed before. And it's amazing how many people have left our vessels saying, well, you know, I'm actually still alive, and this is not bad, and I'm feeling pretty good. So, you know, I think that really is the best way to encourage that. Our crew have put out 3 vegan cookbooks, and those, you know, are getting a lot of support. We're very proud of our vegan chefs, and all the ships have them. And you know, trying to get other groups to, like Oceana, Greenpeace, whatever, Sierra Club, to understand that link has been very, very difficult. We went on board when we were in Cape Town one time with our ship. Our crew went on board the Greenpeace ship Esperanza as a tour, and they noticed that they were on a campaign to save fish off of Africa, but they were all eating fish for dinner. And our cook said, well, this is a little hypocritical, why are you eating fish? And the cook said, well, we got to eat something. And our cook said, well, all our ships are vegan. And their cook said, oh, that's just stupid. So they didn't even want to give it the opportunity. But the real reason that they don't do it, the real reason, and I was a national director of the Sierra Club on this, so I can certainly attest to why they do it. The real reason they don't do it is they're afraid of losing support. They're afraid that their donors, they'll lose contributions if they take a stand on something that truly, truly makes a difference. So promoting veganism truly makes a difference. Yes, well, we're going to lose a certain percentage of our donor base. You know, well, screw your donor base. We're here to make it. Our clients are not your donor base. Our clients are the fish and the whales and the seals and the other animals in the world. They are our clients. Those are who we work for. And it's that kind of attitude, I think, that we have to instill. Back in 1986, we sank half of Iceland's whaling fleet, sent it to the bottom, destroyed their whale processing plant. It was a major hit, shut down whaling in Iceland for 17 years. It took them that long to recover. But the interesting thing about it is that right after that happened, I had a former colleague from Greenpeace. He came up and he says, just want you to know that what you did in Iceland was reprehensible, criminal, and unforgivable. And I said, yeah, so? And he said, well, I think you should know what people feel in this movement about what you did. And I said, you know, John, I don't really give a damn what people feel. We didn't sink those ships for you or for any other human being on the planet. But I'll tell you right now, you find me one whale anywhere in the world that disagreed with what we did that day, I promise we will not do it again. And all through the animal rights movement, that's what we should keep in mind. The clients are not other people. The clients are the species and the individuals that you're representing. Their pain, their suffering, their fate, that is what we're representing. And I think that more and more people are becoming very much aware of that. So the thing is that we have an environmental movement, we have a conservation movement, we have an animal welfare movement, we have an animal rights movement, and there should be a link right across the board where everybody overlaps, where they agree on the same thing and agree that we're all working towards the same end, and be more tolerant, and at the same time learn from each other. And you know, I've learned a lot from these other groups too. And so when people say, well, you're not really an animal rights group, no, we're not. We're a marine conservation group that happens to embrace veganism as a solution to the problems that are happening in the ocean. And therefore, I think that people should embrace veganism as a solution into whatever they're involved in, whatever their job is doing. But if you want to make this a better world, that's the way to go. And thanks. And finally, one question I get asked a lot is, well, how can you be optimistic in the face of all of this horror and you know, this doomsday thing? You know, they call us, you know, you're a bunch of doom and gloom Cassandras. And I say, yeah, well, that may be true, but the fact is Cassandra was right, wasn't she? People just didn't listen to her. But the fact is that where do I get my optimism? Because I have studied the natural history of this planet. We've had 5 major extinctions. The last one 65 million years ago when we lost the dinosaurs. And the most serious one, 250 million years ago, with the Permian extinction, where we lost 97% of everything on the planet. It takes, on average, 18 to 20 million years to recover from a major extinction event. We're now in a 6th major extinction event, which we call the Anthropocene, because we are responsible for it. And what that means is that if we don't solve this problem and deal with what we're doing to this planet, we will go extinct. But the optimistic part, 18 to 20 million years from now, it's going to be a really nice planet around here again. And, you know, and we'll wish all the best for all of those species that are there. They'll have the luxury of not having us around. And I know that might sound very misanthropic, but I have to say I'm proud to be a misanthrope. Reason being, I don't like humanity. I like people. I like people who care. I like people who are concerned. I like people who are involved. But the human race, screw it. They're the reason for this problem. And the only way they're going to change is if enough of us people actually get enough numbers to actually take over their anthropocentric bullshit and replace it with a biocentric attitude. Thank you.